I always feel that the biggest hurdle in real estate is between your ears, that getting yourself to do it, getting yourself to learn, getting yourself to meet with people. That is the biggest thing. The concepts of doing real estate are not that difficult. They are not difficult. It's like I said, most of it is you motivating, getting up off the couch, turning the TV off, and learning. And that's that's the biggest piece.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. Hi there, I'm Christina Suter with Real Estate Breakthrough. I have Jeff Greenberg with me today in the studio. I've actually known Jeff, or Jeff has come to multiples of my meetings for years. And this is actually my first opportunity for me to interview him and to kind of dig in deep to what it is he does, why is he an expert in his particular field, and why he is so committed to this pain in the backside projects called real estate. Because as we know, we use real estate to break through to a greater sense of our vision and freedom, but real estate is not always easy. And so, as I always try every show to give you guys a true and authentic understanding of how real estate can be amazingly powerful and be a pain. So, Jeff, welcome to the studio.
Well, thank you, Christina. Thank you for having me on.
It's good to have you here. So I am going to share your screen so that people can see your website. So it's Synergy. I'm on the bio page, Synergy Investment Group. And you are the primary principal there. And I'm going to read your bio a little bit so people get a sense for your background, and then you can tell us a little bit more. So Jeff Greenberg is the CEO and managing member of Synergetic Investment Group, LLC. He's managed all aspects of commercial and real estate, including acquisitions, operations, value add, dispositions, and investor relations, which he's particularly good at. CIG currently focuses on helping high net worth individuals passively invest with best-in-class commercial deal syndicators and invest in commercial real estate. SIG uses its extensive experience to help investors determine the overall merit of the investment opportunity. SIG has been involved in projects worth nearly $50 million, consisting of over 1,100 units. SIG currently controls property in Texas, Georgia, Arizona, and Ohio, including over 300 student housing beds. SIG has been involved with stabilized and value-add properties, including student housing, short-term rental, and market-rate multifamily properties. Jeff runs his REI meetups since 2005, and more currently, the Multifamily Masters Ventura chapter. Jeff has been a featured speaker on over 30 podcasts, including 3 times on The Best Ever and Bigger Pockets. Jeff, great to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Christina.
So as always, I know I just read your bio and I understand that, but why don't you fill us in a little bit more on the real flesh and blood of what it meant, because you were previously in something else for multiple years, I believe management, and then you chose to transition into real estate. So why make what did you do before and why make the transition into real estate?
Well, for years I was in the IT field. I ran infrastructure for a multi-million-dollar business that we kept the business functioning. And prior to that, I worked for several different city agencies, City of Santa Monica, City of Ventura, as well as private schools. And I came to realize that the money that I was putting away in my IRA, I mean, I was doing what everybody else was telling you to do, put money away in your IRA and, just keep putting it in there, and then you'll be able to retire. Well, I believe it was about 2005, I was going through a divorce, and it gave me the opportunity to take a close look at my finances and realizing that even if I was able to keep my retirement money, the money I was putting into my 401k, and losing my house, there wouldn't be much money in there. And so I lost my house to my ex-wife,
Okay.
and kept my retirement. That was kind of the deal.
Okay.
And I looked at it and said, this isn't going to happen. I mean, I was in my mid 50s at the time, and I needed to figure out a way. And just on a hike with a friend, he mentioned that he was looking at getting into real estate. And at that time, I just thought about it and I said, real estate, getting into real estate. That means you buy single family homes and you rent them out. That was my scope
Sure.
of real estate.
Sure.
I had no other concept of wholesaling or fix and flip or commercial or anything else. So that's basically where the start came from. I started exploring at that point in time different aspects, mainly REOs at that time, bank owned properties
Okay.
was basically what I was looking at that time.
Okay. And so therefore 2005 was when you started contemplating, but it sounds like you started purchasing in 2007.
Well, in 2007, prior to that, I realized that the banks didn't know what to do with the REOs.
Right.
They were taking so long in deciding whether or not to accept your offer, and the prices were dropping so fast that you were losing the value every day that they weren't signing.
Yes.
And I just said, well, getting REOs just wasn't working. My friend went into short sales, and I just really couldn't stomach that. I didn't like the concept of dealing with people that were losing their houses. And so I had to find something else. And that's when I heard about commercial real estate, being able to leverage the limited amount of money that I had and use other people's money to buy real estate. And that was the big thing, is leveraging other people's money was what I really needed to do.
And then you spent some time as a syndicator, actually buying multifamily units, turning them, doing a value add with them before you switched over into your current model.
Yeah, so I ended up buying my first property in 2010. So it took me a while.
Always does.
I mean, I tried. I looked, and we spent a lot of time looking for properties, but we had a set criteria, which I look back now, which was much too high of a standard.
Mhm.
Um,
Sure.
and we could have bought a lot more if we were a little more aggressive. So it did take us 3 years before we bought our first property. But the first property I bought was a 20 unit property. It was in Texas, and we raised money from others to do that. So continued to do that. The last property I bought was March of 2019, was 225 unit in Texas that I syndicated. So between 210 and 2019, I was syndicating multifamily and student housing. And then more recently, just helped another person raise on the equity side, just of September of last year down in Houston. We raised money for that one.
And I mean, I guess what I think about is that because you come from this extensive management background, which means, I mean, effectively, a good real estate deal is effectively a well-managed business. The same skill sets that you use in business, you use in real estate. It's just your inventory ends up being real estate and all the nuances of what real estate brings. But if you're capable of managing a project, then generally the dynamics of real estate, which can be incredibly dynamic, there are lots of moving parts in real estate, that you can bring that type of management skill to a value add, much like you did between 2010 and 2019.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of organizational things in real estate and management. I think I always feel that the biggest hurdle in real estate is between your ears. That getting yourself to do it, getting yourself to learn, getting yourself to meet with people, that is the biggest thing. The concepts of doing real estate are not that difficult. They are not difficult. It's like I said, most of it is you motivating, getting up off the couch, turning the TV off, and learning. And that's, that's the biggest piece in the business.
It's funny because that's what I was about to ask you, was what was most important. Like, now that you've walked this path, right? And you're at this end of the path, which is that you're actually helping to raise equity for other syndicators and not just for yourself. Now that you've walked this path, what is it that people need to know who are more towards the beginning of the path? I think you just nailed something that's hugely important. You said the most single important piece is the space between your ears, getting your mind straightened out and getting committed to what needs to happen.
Absolutely. I feel that that's the main thing. And I love that you brought up just in the beginning is, why are we in this business when it seems to be such a pain?
Yes.
Because I have been to many different events where it's professed how easy it is and everybody can do it, and in 6 months you can quit your job and all this other flowery beautiful stuff, which may be true, but it's still a lot of work. And if you don't motivate yourself and say, hey, it can be done, others have done it, but it will be a lot of work. There will be ups and downs. There will be times you'll doubt yourself and doubt everything.
Yes.
So if you don't have it, if you don't have the mindset, you'll just say, hey, this just doesn't work, and we'll quit.
And you'll quit. I mean, it's I guess because, you've been in it since 2005 or so. You've been researching and wanting to participate since 2005. And I started back in the 80s. It's the long mindset where we go, hey, I remember when I first got into real estate, it was just a game. I mean, truth was, when I switched over from, I invested in real estate when I was young, right? 17, 18, 19, I was young, but it was because my family kind of made me do it. My mom handed me the family house because she was in really poor health. And so I took it over and I rented it out. And then I bought a condo from my brother because my brother didn't want to take care of the condo anymore. And so I bought it from him because I was getting into this real estate gig, right? So I kind of truly, sincerely stumbled into it completely half backsided, right? So since I'm not allowed to say the other word, right? And I just kind of stumbled into it. And here I was, and now, I don't know, it was 2002, 2000, I think it might have been 2000, where all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I've developed enough equity through the different pieces of real estate I'm holding. I should maybe take this seriously. And when I said that to it was like kind of joyful. I'm like, hey, yeah, like, let's do it. This is so fun. I remember taking a workshop and, getting all the amps from the workshop and saying, can I do it? Yeah, I can do it. I've got the capital. I've got the mindset. I've got the commitment. I can totally do it. And it was like a game. It was like a game until my big first loss. It was a game, right? And then it wasn't a game anymore, right? Then it was like, oh crap, I've got condo hotels in Hawaii that are absolutely tanking. I mean, I bought them for like 120,000, not too bad, right? And they tanked to like 14,000.
Wow.
120 to, now I admit this was 2007, right? So this was like the big crash, right? And who knew that condo hotels on the beach in Hawaii would drop from 120 to 14,000. All of a sudden, it ain't fun anymore. You're not having a good time. And all these teachers who keep saying, oh, it's a long-term game. All you got to do is buy cash flow positive properties and you're not going to be worried about it. Just keep a reserve. Like, that reserve was gone. I had I thought it was a huge reserve. It was well over $250,000, $300,000 I had sitting in cash just in case. And it was gone. It was gone in a relatively short amount of time. The cash just to hold the portfolio was disappearing, right? And so it's fun, and it is easy when you're excited. It is easy to get into it. But I guess for me, and in listening to you, and I'm sorry, for some reason, you've inspired me to go into this dialogue, and I apologize for that because it's your interview, not mine. But for me, it was like I had to commit. I had to recommit to the reality of real estate is a lot of fun. And it's really great to get your hands in there and get dirty and get the work done and create something new and get involved with investors. And like, all of that is inspiring. And you're still going to need to show up, grow up, show up, stand up, grow up, and show up when it gets tough, because at some point, if you're going to invest over decades, like you have and I have, at some point you really got to stand up in the fire of it.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm going to not go to the second part. I'm going to stay with the first part for a minute. So what are the things that you've learned to be able to set yourself up for success, knowing that there's a potential fire coming?
Well, the thing is, and I'll say that, this is part of, what I look for when I'm working with somebody else as well, is conservatively evaluating the deals, making sure that you make conservative assumptions. And we've all learned that through COVID, that those people that are hanging it out, are getting exposed. And that's, making sure that you are very conservatively evaluating deals. Also, the integrity and the strength of whoever's sponsoring the deal. What are they going to do? What am I going to do when things are not looking good? You know, am I going to be putting my money into the deal to prop it up while we're trying to survive? What are they going to be doing? Um, and that's kind of the big thing, is being conservative. Money solves a lot of problems with real estate. So if you have enough in the way of reserves hanging in there, you can hang out. But that's the big thing, is not over projecting. And when I look at a lot of pro formas, there's a lot of pie in the sky projections. And I'm always looking for that. Is that okay? What happens if you can't raise the rents like this? What if, what if that's not going to happen? What if occupancy isn't going to be increased? Just to see how conservative someone is in their projections. You get people that are very aggressive, and just because they want the numbers to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I always come back to, who am I dealing with? Who are these people that I'm dealing with, either myself and my team, or if I'm raising money for others, do I want to raise money for these people? Do they have the integrity that they're going to stand up to their deal, and they're going to put honest numbers in? It's
What
easy.
are honest numbers? Like, give us some example of honest numbers. Like I have in my
Conservative
head these words, honest
numbers. Many times I've looked at the first cell in a spreadsheet, in the profit and loss, first year revenue. And I look at that and compare it to the T12, okay, the past 12 months revenue. Okay, first of all, is there a big jump right there in that first T12, or that first cell? And many times I would see that they're projecting rent bumps the first year, that they're going to have either stable occupancy or increased occupancy. And once I see that that number is not conservative or very aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
to me, the rest of the spreadsheet or the performance is contaminated.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times I could throw something out, within 5 minutes, because I say, how are you going to get that kind of rent growth with that many of your units, considering you've got to be down for construction, you've got to wait for the lease to expire. There's so many different things that can happen that can affect that first revenue cell.
Right.
And if it's corrupted, if it's, overly aggressive, I don't need to go on to the rest of it.
It's I think you describe it really well. I mean, if you're looking at, let's say they're assuming 50% of the building's going to have a rent bump within the first year. It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're not. You're just not. You're going to have if you try to push your tenants and your construction budget, your construction timeline, let's put it that way, not budget, timeline. If you try to push that so that you have emptied 50% of your units, rehabbed 50% of units, and refilled 50% of your units, that doesn't happen in a year. It isn't going to happen in a year in a larger building. Let's put it that way. If you had a 4-unit, if you had 4 units, yeah, you could do 2. You could definitely do 2, right? But if you're talking about 20 units, 50 units, 150 units, especially since you prefer to play in the larger dynamics of multi-units, that isn't going to happen. You're not going to get a crew in and out of there that fast. You're not even going to get tenants to leave that fast. I mean, just the whole beginning timeline of getting tenants to leave, you're not going to empty 50% of the building in 6 months or less. I mean,
Well,
unless
you might empty the building. See, that's not even counting how many people will leave when a new owner takes over because they know that the new owner is going to raise rents.
Yeah, there's natural attrition right there. I mean, you have a natural chaos that shows up as soon as, even if you're looking to stabilize it and not even looking to value at it, there's a natural chaos where you get empty units. For that
And then
reason.
you also get the attrition of those people that haven't been paying, and the owner hasn't kicked them out because they want to keep the occupancy numbers up. And so now all of a sudden you started out at 85% and now you're down at 65%. And that's one of those, oh crap moments. What's my break even?
Well, and then now you've got to deal with, yes, no, I agree with you. That's another conservative measure, right? And we should dig into that in just a minute, but let's finish the first year assumptions. Well, so now you've got, let's say you've got 65% effective occupancy.
Economic occupancy, yes.
Economic occupancy, right? But then you still have to get certain amount of those people out who aren't paying, right? And you have to be able to get your crews in to their units, into the empty units, and then to their units. So you might, by the end of your first year, you might be able to turn a good portion of the building, a quarter, a third.
Well, the thing is if when you're down to that 66%, which we were, this is real numbers.
Tell me.
You've got lots of open units to work on. So you don't have to worry about turning anybody else because you have plenty of units to work on. So there is an advantage there.
That's true. That's true.
You don't have to, you want to try to keep the rest of them.
And then what do you do when you've got 66% occupancy and you're planning on 83?
You try to get the others occupied as quickly as possible and get concessions so you don't drain through any reserves you have. So that's what you're doing, is you are marketing the hell out of the units that you're bringing up, and you're making a change in the environment in that property.
And that's back to that single cell number, because if that number assumes that you're actually making money during the first year of turning units over, right? That you've turned them over and you got new renters in there and you're making money during the first year, that's a collapsing of a timeline that seems illogical to me. We just talked about how you kind of need that 6 months to a year to turn the units, turn the tenants, turn the units, get them re-rented. In a year, you might have 50% of the building turned over, but you're not going to have a year worth of profitable performance. You're going to have a year worth of vacancies. So year two, you could say, yeah, I'm going to get a year's worth of having turned 50% of the units. And that's what you're talking about. You can't have that in year one.
You're not going to see that in the first year. And so that's the biggest red flag that I see.
So you had 63% occupancy, you were able to get units rehabbed.
66.
66%. Okay, but one of the things that you talked about, one of the things that we're dribbling by was, now you have to figure out what your break even is. And people often don't, in syndicated deals that I've reviewed, don't say, this is my break even number. If we drop below this number, then I know we're going into reserves and here's the plan. So talk about that. Talk about how you do that on the back end, even if you don't have that conversation with your investors.
Well, I mean, we never expected to get down that low. 85% occupied. We didn't expect, we knew there would be a drop. And our break even was somewhere around 70%. So yes, we were dipping into reserves, but the main thing is to, get staff up and running. We were training staff, we were marketing, we were pushing the property. At the same time, we were renovating the units as we were going. The big question that we had was, do we renovate them up to the standard that we wanted to, which was a higher level, or do we just turn them, get them rentable and get people in? And so that was the conversation we were having, is just trying to get paying customers in the units.
Right, because you can turn those units on the backside. You don't have to turn. I mean, optimally, the plan probably was to turn all units on the front side. When the tenant left, turn the unit, get a higher grade tenant in there, right?
Mhm.
But if you're talking about, hey, wait a minute, now we're below our expected break even, we can just get some tenants in there and know that in 2 years they're probably going to rotate back out again.
Yeah, we could upgrade later, or
Mhm.
do we just want to get some people in? So do we do our upgrades, or we just do a standard turn where it's, a turned unit and don't put all the extra money into it? So, we did a little bit of mixture of that, but the plan was to turn, this was a 225 unit. The plan was to turn 80 units in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we definitely, we exceeded that. We turned 80 units in a year.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that was pretty good.
that was good. I mean, it was good. I mean, because you're dealing with, a larger, it's good and it's panicking, right? So first it's like it's an OSHIT moment where you go, what are we going to do with this? Right? And then you come up with the plan as to what to do with it. And then you implement it. And then a year later, it's like, hey, guess what? We've exceeded our expectations. Isn't this great? We have more than 80 units, and now they're turned in a year instead of a year and a half, which we've now made the building more valuable in a shorter amount of time. But it's a hassle and a hustle.
It is absolutely. And without the phenomenal team that I had and still have, because we still have that property, it wouldn't have happened, because it wasn't just the fact that we were turning the units and spending as little as possible doing that. We also had to do the other part of it, which is the cultural end of it, is getting people to the property, getting them to stay in the property, getting them to be happy with the staff. And that was our management team that did such a phenomenal job with that, and training people and getting people happy.
It's funny. I've done several interviews. I've been interviewing people way before I started my real estate breakthrough show, which I think I only have like 80 shows currently. But I've been interviewing obviously at my meetings and as well as on my previous show, and nobody, I can't think of anybody. Maybe they have, but I've never heard anybody just call it out. Say, part of my responsibility as a flipper is to change the culture of the building, and we've got to change the culture of the building. We need to not only just upgrade the units, but actively engage in the conversation with tenants, changing the culture of the building. How do you do that? Because it's beyond just making a unit look prettier.
Of course. I mean, and I give the credit to my management team and my asset manager for that. But it's first of all changing the culture in the office. Just, that we're there, because of the clients and the attitude that we are there. And right now, we were just had a meeting the other day. We were talking about it, and we were talking to our on-site manager, who says that she knows just almost 100% of the people. Her and her team know them by name. Know each one of the people in our property. And she is so excited about it. Now, this is a lady that was on the property before we bought the property.
Hmm.
She was on the property before we were, and she was so excited to work with our team, because she came and told us that, I've never had any training, that she really hadn't been trained, but our team went out there and worked with them. My management team is Houston based. This is Amarillo, 10 hours away. They lived for 45 days in my model.
Right.
That was the dedication of that team to get this property turned around. Can you imagine a management team coming in, living in your property just to do the training of your staff and to interview staff and to be there on site to get the property turned around? I mean, that's what they did to turn this property.
It's I know we didn't get a direct answer to how you change the culture other than starting with that your team is a team that is focused on having a positive culture, being able to assess people and tenants, being able to have the mindset of adding value to the building, and being able to create tenant loyalty by creating a positive environment, whether that's through monthly meetings or newsletter or, Christmas gifts or whatever, knowing every name of every tenant, and being able to change the culture from these are a bunch of disregarded tenants to no, we know who you are and you're regarded, you're a part of our conversation, and therefore you create more loyalty and you can actually increase the class of your tenant just through the process of intending to create greater loyalty.
Right. And that was, doing activities, for the children. This, pre-COVID, we had at least a monthly activity going on. We had pet adoptions. We do allow pets. We've had the local animal shelter come and bring pets there, and we would waive the pet deposit or a pet fee to to encourage them. My asset manager is a real animal lover, so we got that. We had a Latino organization come in and have a big meeting there to bring in some cultural type of things. Just getting involved with the city and learning about the city, to help people come in and feel at home, and feel welcome in the office, having it set up so people could come in just to chat in the office. Of course, this was all pre-COVID. Things changed a little bit with COVID. Now, even during COVID, though, we were making phone calls. We were making phone calls to each of the tenants to find out how they were, to see. I mean, a lot of it was, finding out how secure their job was, if there was going to be issues. If we found out that there was an issue, telling them some of the resources that they could go to get help, to get to finances, anything that we could do to help them out. There was some people that had no one to bring them food, that maybe they were positive and couldn't get out, to see if we could help make arrangements to get someone to bring food in for them. All different things that we were trying to do, just, to show them we cared and that it was, a community. And I understand that typically on some of the smaller properties, it's kind of hard to do that. I don't know how you can do that on a fourplex. You could have a party once in a while, but when you get to the larger properties where you actually have on-site staff, and that's one of the reasons I love having on-site staff, is you could do these kind of things where you could have different parties. You could have a pool party. You could have a barbecue. We had a rabbit out there for Easter. There's different things that we've done, even during COVID, to make it more of a home for people.
I think that there's two lessons in what you're talking about. One lesson we hear a lot, which is treat your tenants well, you'll create tenant loyalty. But the other lesson that was in there, which I've heard a lot about during the COVID time, was being preemptive about educating your tenants so that they understand better how to take care of themselves, especially with the COVID environment where there is actually help and support available for them, where they could apply, right? They could apply to local governments to be able to get rental support, which would be rent that shows up, in their pocket, but shows up in your pocket. Right. And being able to be preemptive about, not just saying, hey, these guys are, going to have to fend for themselves. And why aren't they paying their rent? And, we're frustrated with the lack of performance from our tenants. It's like, no, we're calling our tenants. We're having a conversation with each and every one of them. We're getting a sense for what kind of trouble they're going to be in. What kind of help do they need? We're getting them support and giving them education on how they can continue to get support. It's a very different relationship. And every story I've heard of people who've dealt with multi-units during COVID, the buildings that have been successful, when they say, hey, no, we didn't have low occupancy problems, we didn't have a lot of non-payment of rents, that was part of the reason, part of the story was because of the preemptive reach out and the support of the tenant base, because they're the ones that are going to have the problems, right? And then that means we as the landlord then has a problem. Right. So I just wanted to point that out because I think people sometimes think, oh, yeah, that's just taking good care of your tenants. And that's a lot of woo-woo stuff or touchy feely stuff that's not important. It's like, no, actually, it's very important. It's important in supporting you as the landlord, having a positive tenant base culturally, as well as preemptively managing problems coming at you.
It's important on both sides. It's important to them that they feel at home, that they feel that this is a home and somebody cares for them. And it's important for us as far as the revenue and the lack of turnover.
Okay.
That, every time we have turnover, those are big expenses.
That's a big
The
expense.
turnover is the big expenses.
Turnovers are big expenses. They're one of the biggest. My clients are often startled with, but I have this great, I'm getting great rent. And then all of a sudden, there's this huge maintenance number. And I don't understand how come my great gross rent property has become a really crappy net income property. And it's like, well, it's your turnover, because turnover is expensive in a lot of different ways. But let's not get into that right now. Okay, let's get into the second half. So here's the thing. Real estate is awesome. It can be a lot of fun. It's a great way to make money. You can absolutely grow your asset base and your cash flow, both if you want. But it's a wonderful way to preserve your capital and to grow your asset base over the long term, especially if that's how you approach it. But it is also something that will try you. So tell us your worst real estate story that you've been involved in.
My worst that I've been involved
Whichever story
in.
you want to pick.
What's that?
Whichever
Well,
story you
I
want to pick.
I mentioned dropping down to 66%.
Well,
That was
continue with that one if that's your worst one.
That was probably one of, the worst things that happened. Well, we could go to when we were buying the property, having $200,000 hard that I wasn't going to get back, and then fighting to get it closed. That.
Well, the full question is, what's your worst story? What'd you do about it? And what'd you learn? How'd you grow up from it?
Well, I guess we could talk about that one. I mean, it was partnerships that to get it closed. There was a lot of issues why it was taking a while to close. One of which was before closing, we found that there was a foundation issue that the seller was going to have to take care of. And because of that, it delayed the close, which was great because we did not raise the amount of money that we had planned on. So that ended up working well with getting some additional partnerships and bringing in some additional partners. But also because of networking, I had the opportunity to meet the lady that became our asset manager, which she's magical. And so that worked out as well as she brought in the management company that she had worked with before. And so that helped immensely on a lot of the issues that we had. But I guess just getting the deal closed and just getting all the pieces together was just, when you're a syndicator, bringing all the pieces together is the tough part. And that's why it's a team sport. I've done one deal by myself. Fortunately, it was after I did several other deals with partners. And so I knew all the pieces, but it's a deal that something I wouldn't want to do again.
Okay.
There's just too many different pieces with lending and equity raise and title and just so much, just getting it closed. It's a team sport and you want to bring in other people, but definitely dropping down to 66% and then working our way back up, which now I believe we're at 95%. I think we're pre-leased at like 98 or 100%. And this was all during COVID. So we're very excited about that. But yeah, those things do give you some sleepless nights.
Yes, they do. So given that real estate can be such a pain, why use real estate to break through to your financial freedom?
Well, real estate is the only thing that I know of, the only vehicle that I know of that can really accelerate your wealth. You could gamble in the stock market and crypto and other vehicles, but with real estate, you can really leverage other people's money. You can leverage the bank. I mean, typically the bank is anywhere from 65 to 80% of your, as your partner, the money they're bringing in. So you're leveraging that. So even slight increases in value in the property, the bank doesn't get to take advantage of those. You do.
You do.
You do. So small increases in value is amplified because of the leverage. And that you typically don't, you're not going to see in other vehicles. And also being able to bring people in as co-investors with you. And so you're also getting the benefit of helping other people out. And that's where I've kind of switched my focus, is focusing in on that and bringing other people in and educating other people about this vehicle. So yeah, it can be a pain and there can be a lot of sleepless nights, but you get the right team that are doing a lot of that work, and then you get to sleep a lot better.
I love that focus on team. I mean, everybody's answer is different. For some people it's team. For me, it's team. For me, it's team. Team makes it or break it. Period. You know, I invest in state, out of state, so I'm really reliant on my team. And so I'm with you. I think team is the make or break it. Some people are numbers. Some people are finance is the make or break. Right. But for me, it's team. If your team is not effective, not working well, they're not focused. That's where every time I review where I've lost money, it's team. It's pretty much team. I can think of one example where I can say I lost money because of a decision I made that was purely financial, that was just ended up being a bad decision. But it's just team over and over and over again. So what does financial freedom mean to you? Like, why, again, we're facing real estate. You worked just fine. You were creating a retirement account for yourself. You would have had probably a pension plan and some Social Security when you retired. And yet you switched over to this field that demanded more of you, or I'm assuming demands more of you than your previous field did. So what does financial freedom mean to you? Why be committed to it?
Well, in the beginning, certainly I didn't get what I wanted, which was my time, because it is demanding. It is very demanding. But my big goals were financial freedom, obviously, so I could quit my job, which I did about 4 years ago.
Okay.
So time was a big thing, but also having sufficient money in retirement. And my 401k and my stock portfolio wasn't going to do it. That wasn't going to happen. So um, I wanted both. I mean, and that's kind of where I'm changing right now, is that, I've got the financial freedom right now, and I have the time, uh, because I get to pick and choose. I get to pick and choose when I work and when I don't work. Obviously, I've got meetings set up, but I have the flexibility of when I set them up. Typically, I don't have a meeting before 10 o'clock, because those are my mornings to go do my bike rides and to walk my dog, and to think and figure out where my day is going to go. And so I have that flexibility of time to do that. And now with my new focus, which is raising equity for high quality deal sponsors, um, I could do that whenever I want. I'm, always contacting people and talking to people, and I spend a lot of time talking to people, but I still can do it on my time. My commute is from my bedroom to my office, 35 feet. And I tell people the only traffic I hit is when my dog gets in the way. So that's my enjoyment. And if I don't want to work, I go out in the backyard and do something, and maybe work on the pool or something else that, or take care of the monarch butterflies I'm trying to raise. But the time is mine, and that's the important part, is time at this moment. And I also have grandkids that I want to do things for, and educating them, I guess. That's one of the things. I play financial games with them because I want them to have a head start on this journey.
So I love it because what you've described is that it sounds like your why is really control over your time, being able to live a life that's paced the way that works for you, not to stop working altogether, not that you don't want to be in real estate at all, or that you don't want to show up for meetings at all, but really to be able to pace your day and have control over your time. And you have that now, whether or not you have 100% of your retirement portfolio, quote unquote, intact, you have that now.
Absolutely. And the thing is with what I'm doing right now and looking to bring investors into deals, I don't have to do any deals. I do have investors that would like to do something with their money and want to bring it into deals. So I do feel some of that pressure to help them out, but I will not go into a deal with a deal sponsor and a deal that I'm not thrilled about, that I don't want to jump into. So that's what I spend my time now, is meeting more and more deal sponsors, evaluating them, and deciding if I'm willing to bring investors into those deals. I end up throwing out more deal sponsors than I do gathering, because of something that I don't feel real comfortable with it in their structure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of different, we could probably do a whole show just on, actually, we could do a whole show just on how to evaluate syndicators and what's most important in that. Of course, team would be one of our key elements, because the team makes or breaks the deal. Jeff, thank you for your time. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for your authenticity and for your willingness to share what, pain, real estate can be a pain, but it also can be hugely rewarding. And it is something that gives us control over our time. And you can reach your freedom goals before you even reach some of your financial goals. It's not something like retirement where you have to wait until you're done with your W-2 and then go, okay, now I can play golf. The beauty of real estate is you can play golf and continue to grow your net worth while you're doing real estate. Not that you like to play golf. I don't know that you do.
No, I'm not a golfer.
But you can play, you can spend time with your grandchildren.
I like to bike ride though.
You like to bike ride. So bike ride and play time and spend time with your grandchildren.
Thank
you, Jeff. I so appreciate having you here in the studio. This is Christina Suter with the Real Estate Breakthrough Show. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, and a variety of other podcast platforms, as well as Roku TV and YouTube. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina.